Welcome to Potentials. This is Lígia, and Frank Chille and Andrea Martin are my guests today. And today we're going to talk about Chille and her inner earth experiences. Thank you guys again for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I always love having you on. And it's always an honor to have you.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you and Andrea once again, Linda. And I met a very remarkable woman. I think I told you that I joined Del Valle UFO after having an experience of being guided into a bookstore, and a metaphysical book kind of vibrated to me. And when I went back again, I found a postcard regarding Del Valle UFO, which was the local UFO organization. It was in Cinnaminson, New Jersey. And I started interacting with them, and they made me the recording secretary of the club. And we would have anywhere from 75 to 150 people attending our monthly meetings. And these would be blue-collar workers. It would be executives. It would be lawyers. It would be engineers. It was a great cross-section of individuals that were very open to metaphysics and UFOs. So we had gotten a notice that a woman by the name of Chille, Kala-Lee, was going to be our guest speaker. And our meetings usually ran from about 8 o'clock at night till about 10. So Chille got there about maybe 15 minutes before our meeting would start. And she introduced herself to me, and I introduced myself to her. And she said, Frank, it's very important that promptly at 8 o'clock you close the doors, and only the people that are here are meant to hear my presentation tonight. And I said, all right, Chille, if that's what you would like me to do. And I said, normally we have anywhere from 75 to 150 people there. And there was only maybe about 9 or 10 people in the auditorium. So she said, please comply with what I'm asking. And I said, sure, I certainly will. She said, close the doors at 8 o'clock. If they're not here, they're not meant to hear it. So I said, I agreed. And 8 o'clock came, and I shut the doors. There was maybe 9 people in there. And she introduced herself. She was originally from down south, from the Virginia area, and her name was Virginia Britt. And she married at a young age a fellow who was a union negotiator for corporations, and he would travel all over the United States, all over the world. So shortly after they got married, she had always had an interest in unusual things, and as a young girl, her father would go around the world capturing animals for zoos. And at the age of probably 8 or 9, the father wanted to take Virginia on a trip where he would be gathering animals from Tibet. And the mother said yes. So Chille told us that she was taken to Tibet, and she was in a monastery. And she said the monastery was very, very primitive. She said it was a circular room that they were in. And she said they burned dung to stay warm and to have heat. And she said she had her back to the wall. Next to her on her left side was a tapestry. And something guided her to look behind the tapestry. And when she did, she saw a valley deep below where the monastery was. And she said she saw these white round objects coming down from the sky and landing, and others coming up from the valley floor and going up into the sky. And that was her first experience seeing UFOs. And again, she was maybe about 8 or 9 years of age. When she came back, she was very impressed by what she had seen. And of course, then she became an older young lady and got married. And Robert told her that they were going to be going to Tokyo. He needed to work with a firm there in regards to negotiating with the employees. So they stayed in a very nice place. And during the daytime, as Robert would be at work, Chille would take a bike and ride along an abandoned quarry. And this abandoned quarry was terraced. And she said when she would go by and some of these ledges, she said there would be these storm drains opening up that would take storm water from storms from Tokyo into this quarry. And she said every time she passed one of the sewer pipes, and they were huge, she said they were about maybe 10 feet in diameter, she said she would always look in. And she happened to pass this one where she saw something inside of this huge pipe. So she stopped, she got off her bike and started walking into this pipe She walked maybe 100 feet inside of it, and she got caught in a force field. She couldn't move forward or backward, and she panicked. She was probably about 19 at the time, 19 years of age. She panicked and she passed out. When she woke up, she said she was on the other side of the storm drain, and she said she was in a cavern. And she said her head was cradled in the lap of an individual who was not from Earth. And they welcomed her to this realm, and they said that they were going to initiate her into this inner Earth organization, and they showed her this temple called the Temple of Kalar. She was so impressed with it that she adopted the name of that temple into her name. And she said, I no longer wanted to be called Virginia. I wanted to be called Galilee, after the Temple of Kalar. And she said they gave her a series of 7 tones. And they told her these tones would be very important for her. They were basically to be used with crystals that she was to use to activate Christ gates all around the planet. Now, she was being told this at the age of 19. They showed her how to exit this area, and she said that they made sure that she knew these tones, and she was going to be using these tones in her work. And she got back on her bike and went back to the hotel where she was staying with Robert. And she told Robert that she no longer wanted to be called Virginia. She said, my new name is Cowley. And he wanted nothing to do with that. He was not into metaphysics at all. So she started becoming a voracious reader of metaphysical books and started to accumulate a vast library of metaphysical material. And she had heard about the UFO organization that was started by George Van Tassel at Giant Rock, the Giant Rock UFO conventions. And she joined an organization that was set up by Gabriel Green. It was called the Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America. And she was a member number 3 to join that organization. And her family didn't know this, but Lee had the ability of being able to bilocate. She had learned this ability. She had been asked to become a member of the Monastery of the Seven Rays, which is a monastery that's above Lake Titicaca in Peru. And she was one of 2 women that were allowed to go into this seminary, this monastery that was basically male dominated. It was her and a woman that she was to learn later. Her name was Sister Thedra. And both Sister Thedra, that I had met later on, and Callie knew of each other and knew they were the only 2 women that were allowed to become part of this male-dominated monastery. She said when she was there, they taught her how to bilocate. They said, she said that they also shared with her, she got a chance to meet the last living Cyclopean that was living on this planet. And she said he was probably about maybe 12, 13 feet tall. And she said he was so gentle. And she said the monks would administer to him with giving him beverages and food and things like that. And she said she had seen him and he had passed in the year 1957. She said also she had been shown the giant sun disk of Atlantis. She said when Atlantis had sank, she said the sun disk had been taken to the monastery for safekeeping and would be revealed to the world at some future date. She was also taught how to be able to change identities if she bilocated and to have a different image. And they also taught her the process of rejuvenation. And she learned all these things and she kept it very, very quiet, but she allowed people that she met who were open and receptive to this, she thought would be open and receptive to it, to be able to hear some of what it is that she was involved in. And she shared with us that when she was given these 7 tones, she crafted a song that she had dedicated to Rigdon Gaipo, who is the king or the ruler of the inner earth. And she was asked to return to the inner earth. And she had a meeting with him and she sang this song to him. And it was a beautiful song. She shared it with us at this meeting at Del Valle UFO. She sang this beautiful series of tones and she sang it in a language I'd never heard before. And it aligned all my chakras. And if I felt like I was being propelled back in time, like 50,000 years, and I was seeing all kinds of things. So she spoke for quite a period of time, and she said that Robert had asked her to accompany him on another business meeting. They were going to go to Chicago, and they were going to be staying at a facility, hotel motel that was outside of Chicago on the outskirts. And she said that she was on the second floor of this complex, and she said it overlooked an abandoned golf course. And the day that Robert was going to go to work, he said, he still called her Virginia. He wouldn't call her Callie. He said, Virginia, would you like me to call a limo for you? I'll have a limo take you into Chicago where you could do some shopping. And she said, no, I want to stay here. I just want to be quiet. So Robert left. She went back on the balcony, and she was looking down at this abandoned golf course, and her attention was drawn to the part of a tree that had been struck by lightning. And all that was left of it was maybe about 2 or 3 feet of the base of the tree. And she went outside and left her room and walked into the golf course, and she got in front of this remnants of this tree, and she said she's looking at it, and the next thing she knew, the ground opened up, and she said a set of stairs were revealed to her, and she said she saw 2 monks walking up to the top step, and she said they were wearing brown cloaks, and she said they had a brown hood as well. She said they looked just like us, and she said when they got to the top step, they nodded their head to her, and she knew she was to walk down the set of stairs with them, and she would be in the middle. And she went down to down the steps into this cavern, and as they walked down, the ground behind them covered up. And she said they got to the base of the stairs, and this huge cavern was beautifully lit. And she said at the base of the step, she saw, not too far away from where she was standing, an etheric waterfall. And she knew that she needed to stand under this waterfall. And she said it was not wet. It looked like liquid light. And she said it had the most astounding colors. And she said she stood under it for a period of time. She doesn't know how much time passed, but she said when the waterfall stopped, this etheric waterfall stopped, she knew that what she was to have undergone was done. She said it was like a baptism of light. And she said she walked back to where the 2 monks were. And again, no words were exchanged. She said she got between both of them again in the center of them, and they turned around and started walking up the stairs. And she said they got to the top step, and she left them. She turned around. They bowed their head to her once again, and she bowed her head to them. And they walked down the stairs, and the ground covered up again. So that was the experience she was to have when she was there. So she shared these stories with us. And as recording secretary, my responsibility was when we had a guest lecturer, I was to record the lecture using a cassette tape. And they were 90-minute tapes. Some of them were 2-hour tapes. And once the tape expired and stopped, I was to flip it over. And I did that during the course of the lecture. So Callie just looked at me when I went over to the tape recorder and just smiled. And I didn't know why she was smiling. But she shared another song with us, and she told us that her tones were to be used to open up Christ gates on different continents around the world. But she said it was not to include Antarctica. She said she was to go to these other continents with these crystals that would be guided to be in her possession, and she would use these tones to operate the Christ gates and to open them up, make them active. So at the end of the lecture, she thanked everybody for being there. And the people were astounded. We were all astounded that we were part of this group to hear this incredible story by this woman who kept a very low profile. And she had 3 daughters and a son, okay? And her children knew that she was exceptional, but they didn't believe in what she was doing was indeed valid and true. They thought that the mother fantasized a lot. So Callie said to me, Frank, would you take me home? She said, I don't live too far from here. I live about 10 miles away. And I said, I'd be happy to, because her husband had dropped her off at the lecture, and he was going to pick her up and take her home. So we exchanged phone numbers, and she became like a teacher for me. So I had the tape recording of the lecture, And I was going to make copies because people who were living in other states wanted to get copies of the lectures for that month. And some of the people lived in New York, some lived in Pennsylvania, some lived in Connecticut. We had members all over the place. So I started to make copies of the lecture. And the only things that were on the cassette tape was, "Good evening, my name is Cal Lee." And then, "Good night, thank you for attending." That's it. Nothing else was recorded. And I called up Callie and I said, "Callie, I was to tape your lecture so that the other members who were not here, there was only like 9 people at the lecture, could hear what your lecture was about." And she said, "Frank, I told you, only those who were there were meant to hear this." And she said, "I knew that you were recording it, but she said it was not to be recorded. So that's why you only heard, 'Hello, good evening, my name is Cal Lee, and good night, and thank you for coming.'" That's all that was on the tape. And the president of the organization and the vice president and the treasurer were blown away. They said, "This has never happened before." I said, "This is quite a remarkable woman." So I would begin to interact with her, and her husband moved from where they were living to a place in Burlington Township. And she said that she had a beautiful home. It was like on a corner piece of property. And in the back, she had a bird bath. And she would open up the back of her property where the bird bath was. She used her talents to open up a portal where miniature unicorns would come through. And the back part of her property, whenever she would do that, would be covered with this haze, like fog, but it would only be in the back part of her property. And she would do it, and the neighborhood children would come by, and she said she did it so the children would have the experience of meeting with these. They were like ponies, but they were unicorns. And she said they were patting the ponies and touching the horn and touching their mane and their tail. And she would do this several times a week for the children. And one time she said that Robert was home. She usually did this when Robert was not at home. And Robert answered the door when the children came to the door, about 5 or 6 children. And they said, "Could we go in your backyard, Mr. Britt?" They knew his name was Robert Britt. They called him Mr. Britt. They said, "Could we go back there and play with the little horses?" And he thought that the children were just fantasizing. And he said, "Sure, if you want to go in the backyard, you can go in the backyard." And he said, I happened to be there for dinner, and he said the children would go in the backyard, and it's like they were touching something that he couldn't see. He didn't have the innocence that the children had to interact with the unicorns. And Callie told me, she said, Robert is not of the mindset to appreciate that. She said, but the children do. And she would open up that portal several times a week, and several of the unicorns would come through, and then they would go back through it, and she would close it. And she said it was just a gift for the children. I mean, it was really astounding. So the night that she had lectured at the Delva UFO facility, which was a municipal building in Cinnaminson, I had forgot to mention this to you. There were UFOs sighted above the facility that night. And there was an article in the Courier Post the next day in the Burlington County Times that UFOs were spotted above the municipal complex in Cinnaminson. And when Callie saw those articles in the paper, she just smiled. She said, they were just showing themselves, you know. She was not surprised at all. So she told us that the beings that she interacted with, she said they didn't have names. Because I would ask her, I said, Callie, do they have names, your teachers? She said, no. She said they had frequencies. And she said, I identified them by their frequency. And she said, I would talk to them using their frequency. And she had the ability of being able to communicate with these beings. And she said they taught her many, many different things. And as I mentioned to you, she had 3 daughters and a son, and they didn't know that the mother had the ability to bilocate. And she had shared with me that she had gone out to Giant Rock to the conventions there, the UFO conventions. And she knew that I had met Gabriel Green out there, and Gabriel had told me, yes, I know Callie. And he said, this is her card. She was member number 3 when I started the Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America. And she would come out here and we would see her at the conventions. I said this to her children, her 3 daughters, and the daughters didn't believe it. They said, Frank, during that time period, our mom was raising us. She was here with us. And Callie would just smile because she was bilocating. She was at home with her 3 children, taking care of them, and also at Giant Rock Convention. And she did that many, many times during her life. And nobody knew the difference. And she had this ability. She had this ability that every 20 years, she would go through this process where there would be, and I don't mean to make this graphic, but there would be a bloodletting from her lower extremity, from both parts of her lower extremity. She would have this tremendous menstrual cycle, and it would last almost all night long. And the next day, when the sun rose, she would be perfect, and she would be like 20 years younger. Nobody understood that, but she had told a friend of mine, Roberta, who I'll talk about at some future time. She's the one that could read the Akashic records. Roberta was with her during one of these sessions, and they happened to be, I believe she was visiting Roberta in North Carolina. And Roberta said, Frank, I was wrapping bath towels around Cowley. She was bleeding so heavily that the bath towels were saturated with blood. And she said, I thought she was going to pass. And she said, when the sun came up, Cowley was perfectly well, and she was rejuvenated in age again. And Cowley had told Roberta that she goes through this. Roberta didn't believe it, but she saw it for herself. And I was living in Atlanta, and I was dating a girl by the name of Gloria. And Cowley had told me, she said, Frank, you may meet somebody during the course of your travels that I could take as a student to teach her and give that person the mantle of her teachings to be able to work with the tones. And I thought this girl, Gloria, was perhaps a woman that could be possibly a contender for that that opportunity. Well, Cowley had asked Gloria if she would be willing to go with her. She needed to go to Tibet, and she said she needed to activate a crystal there that was one of the Christ gates. So Gloria went with her, and Gloria told me when they came back, she said, Frank, I was with Cowley when she went through one of those episodes, and she said, I never saw so much blood in my life. And she said, I thought Cowley was going to pass during the night. And she said, when the sun came up, she said Cowley's energy completely returned. She was very youthful looking, and they went out and they started climbing mountains. Going through all that all night long. Gloria says, I couldn't believe it. She said Cowley had all this energy after going through that episode. And I want to share this with you, that when she passed away about 7 years ago, I happened to visit her every night. She was in hospice at her daughter's home. And the night that she passed, that occurred again. And when they had the services for her casket was open, and she looked to be in her late 30s, early 40s. But her physical age was much, much greater. She would have been in her 80s. And she was as youthful as when she would go through that rejuvenation process. And she had met during the course of her travels. She happened to be in Florida, and she said she saw this young boy on a park bench, and she said she was drawn to go over to him. And she said this boy had the unusual ability of being able to draw, but he would draw backwards. In other words, the end of what the drawing would be, he would start at the end and then reverse it all to where you would think the drawing would start from the beginning. And she said, I could tell by his energy that he was an inner earth being. And she said, she asked him, she said, are you here visiting the surface? And he said, yes, I am. She said he appeared to be maybe 20, 21 years of age. But she said she sensed that he was far older than that. And she said that he was indeed an inner earth person, and he was spending some time on the surface. Well, also, while she was there, she met a woman who had had her own series of communications with visitors. And her name was Elizabeth. And it wasn't Prophet. It was, it'll come to me as I'm talking to you. She had a series of experiences with visitors. And Cowley had told me, she said, Frank, you need to get in touch with this woman and be in communication with her. She's had some incredible experiences. And she wrote a manuscript called Jephelin, the Mothership of the Galaxy, and gave me a copy of it. and it was a very limited edition. And it talked about her experiences on this huge mothership that travels throughout our galaxy. And it's called Jephelon, and they monitor the activities and the spiritual awareness of individuals using dials that show colors of the inhabitants' awareness. And she said they taught her how to bilocate. It's an incredible book. It's an incredible manuscript. And I have it in PDF form, and I'm going to share it with you and Andrea so that you can read it. Her name was Pritchett. Her last name was Pritchett. And she was an incredible woman, an incredible woman. And she shares the experiences with the beings that look like us aboard Jephelon. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were 14,000 people on board this huge mothership. And she said it would just tour the galaxy. And I will share with you and Andrea, and if you want, you could share with other people. It's really extraordinary. It was never officially printed. It was just done in manuscript form. And I think she had 110 copies of the manuscript that she would just give to people. And thank God it's in PDF form, so I'll be able to share it with you. But she shared that. Oh my God, it's an incredible story. And she also wrote a story called Excalibur, about the true story of the sword in the stone and King Arthur. And I'm hoping to be able to get that in PDF copy as well, to be able to share with you and Andrea and others. But this woman lived her whole life interacting with our friends, our star friends, and really not drawing any attention to herself. And she lived in Plant City, Florida. And,
that's not far from me.
Really?
It's like about an hour away.
Wow. Okay. So she spent her whole life there and continued to interact with her star visitors, her star friends. And when they taught her to bilocate, she was doing the same thing Callie was. She'd be at home with her family and be on board the craft at the same time. But they would tell her, just relax when you're doing this. So this way, it's so easy for you to accomplish. So Callie only spoke at our UFO club once. However, the rest of my interaction with her throughout the rest of her life, we were always probably maybe 15 or 20 miles away. She lived on the East Coast. I lived on the East Coast. She moved to the West Coast. I moved to the West Coast. And we would visit. And it was really remarkable because she had the ability. She didn't like to spend long periods of time in a car, and neither did Roberta. And whenever we would get together, I introduced her to Roberta, and was like they were sisters, metaphysical sisters. And Roberta didn't like to be in a car either for a long period of time. But when Callie lived out in California, she lived in Huntington Beach. They wanted to go. Do you know where Huntington Beach is?
I've been there.
Okay, yes. It's a very nice place.
It's so weird.
A lot of synchronicities. So Roberta had agreed to come out to California, and we were going to go to Mount Shasta. It was going to be Roberta and Callie, and this woman who sang opera, who lived in, oh my gosh, it's up above Carmel. It'll come to me in a minute. But she was to accompany us to Shasta, and when Callie and Roberta got in the car, they said, "Frank, do not be surprised at what's going to happen. We do not like being in a car. We're going to collapse time." And they said, "You're going to experience the passage of time unlike anything you've ever seen." So we had to drive from Huntington Beach to Half Moon Bay. That's where Joanne lived. Okay. She lived in Half Moon Bay. And that's probably about a 4-hour drive from Huntington Beach. And we got there in about 45 minutes. I'm driving the normal speed limit, and yet I'm passing all these cars. And Callie and Roberta in the back giggling. So we picked up this Joanne, and we were to leave the next morning, because from Half Moon Bay to Mount Shasta was about a 6-hour ride. I mean, the state of California is a huge state.
Yes.
So Roberta and Callie are in the back, and Joanne's in the front, and I'm driving. And they said, "Frank, you're going to have that same experience again, because we don't like being in the car." So I said, "All right." So I'm driving the normal speed limit, and I'm passing cars like they're standing still. And we get up to Mount Shasta. We get up to Mount Shasta in about maybe an hour and 15 minutes. And I am telling you, I thought I was going to be stopped by a police car because I thought I was going so fast. But the speedometer only read 60 miles an hour. And I'm passing all these cars. And they said, we told you we're going to collapse time. And they both had that ability of being able to collapse time. And we did the same thing coming back. And it was astounding. It's just like sharing normal time with somebody, except at a faster pace. And nothing changed except how fast I was passing all these cars. But I wanted to share that with you. It's like so that you don't think I'm making this up.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so. Do you think it worked? They did it in tandem together, like they were both collapsing. Or do you think it was
they were
just
doing it? They were doing it together, but they each had the ability of being able to collapse time. So it didn't matter if they were by themselves or together. It would have been the same amount of time. And I am telling you, I never drove such huge distances in such a short period of time. And I felt exhilarated all the time that I was driving. I didn't feel any fatigue or anything at all, And we really didn't have to stop along the way for anything. It's because time went by so very, very quickly. And the same thing happened going back.
Right.
But the bonding that Callie and Roberta had was incredible. And they had different aspects of metaphysics because they came from different backgrounds. Roberta came more from a Kabbalistic background, and she was taught the Kabbalah, and she had the ability of being able to read the Akashic records without going into trance. All she would do is shift her consciousness. She'd be talking as we're talking, and she would be at the Akashic records, and Abu Kashkar, who's the caretaker, would be there with her and giving her a disc that would have somebody's life record on that she would see in a holographic form and tell the person about it. And the person would ask questions. And then after she was done doing a reading on that person, she would give the disc back to Abu Kashkar, and he would put it into the Akashic records area where that person's life was recorded or was kept for her lifetime, for that person's lifetimes. And it was just really extraordinary. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I
just was wondering what it looked like to have it.
It was a disc that looked like
a hologram would come up out of it.
Yes, they would give her. It looked like a DVD. It was like a silver DVD, and when Roberta would hold it in her hands, a holographic projection would come out displaying the person's life. And if the person asked Roberta certain questions regarding that life, Roberta would be able to see exactly what had occurred, because whatever that person's question was, the hologram would go to that point to give the answer.
Yeah, I had that done by an extraterrestrial Zachar, and it's just he just pulls up, it's a holograph, and you just sit there and watch with them.
Yes.
Wow.
And Andrea, you had said that you had seen the discs on Mars.
Yeah, so I think so. So actually, I saw the discs on the Pleiades.
The Pleiades, okay.
But on Mars, I was shown a table that Abu Kashkar had in one of the rooms. It was like a table. That was what I saw at it looked like the ruins of some kind of temple. So it must have been probably an Akashic temple, some kind of record keeping area. So he showed me and Evan this table, and he wiped it because it was all dust and everything. But we're thinking it was Mars because it was all red rocks, real hard red rocks and dust.
Yes.
And but we couldn't get anything out of it because I don't. The best I could describe the writing that had come up in front of me was like Ethiopian glyphs.
Wow.
So that's I don't know what that would be, but the only time I ever saw an Akashic disc was on the Pleiades. I was handed one. And
was it silver? Did it look silver to you?
Actually, alabaster looking.
Wow. Okay.
Same size with the hole in the middle, but alabaster kind of. I don't know. It wasn't alabaster, but that's how I would describe it.
Yes. It's remarkable, it really is. But if I could return to another adventure Callie had, was that she happened to be in her bedroom, and her husband was in bed, and Callie was sitting at her mirror, just combing her hair, brushing her hair, and her daughter was coming out of the bathroom, and she said, a being materialized in the upstairs part of Callie's home, and she said he must have been, the daughter told me this herself. Her daughter's name was Mardi, and she said the being appeared to be 7 feet tall, and she said he was an incredible looking being. And she said, my mother's down the hall in her bedroom. So the being walked down the hall, and the doorway was open. He walked in, and Robert was in bed, and he saw the being come in and pulled the covers up over his head. He didn't want to see it. It was so funny. Callie told me the story. She said, Frank, she said, what Mardi said is indeed true. She said the being materialized, and he was to give me a message, and he spoke to her in like a frequency. And so Robert didn't understand what was being said, but she said he saw the being come into the room and just lay down on the bed and pulled the covers over his head. He didn't want to see nothing. But he knew his wife was very, very special. And he had several illnesses in his life, and she healed his illnesses. But he never accepted that she had that gift, because he was fighting various forms of cancer, and he'd gone through chemotherapy and radiation, and they said it was terminal, and she reversed the conditions for him several times. And but he never wanted to give credence to the ability that his wife had. And she would have he would have business meetings at the house. Callie was a gourmet cook, and she would entertain all the business executives with incredible stories. She had incredible insights about things, and Robert was never embarrassed by her. And she had told me that she reached the part of her life here on the planet where she was told not to eat anything except flower petals. And she would have me over for dinner. She'd make a gourmet meal, and she'd have a plate of flower petals. She would pour a little bit of extra virgin olive oil on it and a squeeze of lemon, and that was it. And she had the energy to do whatever she needed to do. And she said, Frank, she said, this is not unusual. She said, there's actually a community that lives in Northern California that lives on a mountaintop. And she said, they've evolved to the point where they can exist on pure water, and they could take sunlight and go through a photosynthesis where they take the sun's light energy and convert it to energy. And they don't have to eat anything at all. She said, it's just drinking water and using sunlight, and like plants do, for energy. And she said, they don't age as we do. She said, they don't age as we do. They basically live amongst themselves. And she said, it's a very spiritual group of people. But she said, those things can be done. And she said, don't think that this is unusual, that I'm getting my energy just out of flower petals. But she said, that's all that I need.
That does not surprise me at all. To be honest, I think that she's probably healthier than most people, because a lot of our food has been poisoned and it's not even healthy for you anymore. So you're probably better off eating something.
She was told that. She was told that exactly, Linda, that she was to keep her energy very high and very, very pure. And whatever they instructed her to do, she would follow. And I happened to meet this other girl that when I moved out to California. Her name was Patricia. She lived in Newport Beach. And I think I'd mentioned to you the story about meeting a woman who was from the East Coast, that Patricia had me come to a Unitarian meeting and meet. And she went by the name of Dolly. Did I share that story with you and with Andrea? She said, Frank, I have to have you meet this woman. Her name is Dolly, and she's had incredible experiences. Because I was sharing with Patricia about our star friends that are here. And she said, Frank, come to the meeting on Sunday, and I'll introduce you to Dolly. So I went to the meeting, and as soon as I went to that meeting, when she came up to the podium, I recognized her, but I didn't know how I recognized her. And she said that she was from the East Coast. And she said she was born with the gift of being able to see spirit and to communicate with spirit. And she said, my family did not like that. And they told me either stop doing what I'm doing, or they were going to ostracize me from the family. And she said, this was a gift given to me by God, and I wasn't going to suppress it. So she said, I will leave the family and move to California. And she said, my last name was Campbell, Dolly Campbell of Campbell Soup. And I recognized her from the Campbell Soup twins. You used to have the commercials of the little boy and the little girl. Well, good. Campbell soup was good. And she had the high cheekbones, and I recognized her immediately. I recognized her from the Campbell soup commercials that they would show as a little girl and a little boy, but they were like cartoon images. But
Brenda hasn't heard this story.
I have not.
No.
What, you've never heard this?
Yes.
Oh, this is a good story. So anyway,
5 seconds.
we got a chance to meet and bond, and she told me of an experience that she had where she was given a stipend by her family. So she really didn't need money. She lived in Orange, California, off of Harbor Boulevard and Orange Street. And it was a very busy intersection where Harbor Boulevard was. And she had a bow window overlooking Harbor Boulevard. And she worked as in hospice in the local community hospital in Orange, California. It was called Orange County Community Hospital. So she started getting a series of messages from people who claimed to be star beings. And Dolly said, there's no such thing as star beings. What am I getting? I'm getting misinformation. So she got like 3 or 4 messages from people who claimed to be star beings. And she said, this is nonsense. This is not true. So she was getting ready to go to work. And she happened to be looking out the window. It was about 15 minutes before she was going to leave to go to work. And she would walk to the hospital because it was a couple blocks from where she lived. And she saw this young man, about 21, 22 years of age, waiting at the traffic light. And before the traffic light changed, he walked out into traffic and got hit by a car going at about 55, 60 miles an hour. And it threw his body up into the air. And Dolly said he came down and his bones, his arms and legs were all twisted. Everything looked broken. And she ran outside right away. And she bent down and she heard him say, there was no blood. There was no blood at all. But you could see his body was twisted and broken in all these different angles. So he said to her, come with me to the hospital. So Dolly didn't know who this person was. And he said, please come with me to the hospital. So the ambulance came right away because they were so close to the hospital. And they put him on a gurney, on a stretcher, and put him in the ambulance. And Dolly got in the ambulance with him. So they took him to the emergency room right away. They took him in for x-rays, and he said, please stay here. So she stayed because he was still conscious. They brought him in, and they gave him a series of x-rays, and they wheeled him into a private room. And he said, Dolly, please stay here with me. So they said, we're going to have to rush him into surgery immediately. He's got so many broken bones. They were just waiting for the x-rays to come back in detail so they could see what it was they were going to do. So the doctors came in, some nurses were there. Then they left the room, and there was an orderly there. And he said to the orderly, this fellow said to the orderly, would you please get me some distilled water? I'm so very, very thirsty. Will you please get me some distilled water? So the orderly said, I can't give you anything to drink. You're going to be rushed into surgery. You have all these broken bones and you're probably bleeding internally. He said, please go ask the doctor if I could have some distilled water, please. So orderly looked at this guy in complete disbelief and he said, all right, I'll go and ask, but I don't think he's going to give me the green light. So the orderly left and they were just left there. It was him and Dolly. He said to Dolly, Dolly, go over by the doorway and please let me know if you see anybody coming. So Dolly looked at him saying, what are you asking me to do? He said, please go by the doorway and let me know if anybody's coming. So she walked over to the doorway and he said, do you see anybody coming? And she said, no, there's nobody coming in the hallway. So he sits up in bed and Linda, he starts putting his arms back into joint. He starts putting his legs back into joint and he starts working on his chest like he's fixing his rib cage. And he gets up off the bed and he walks over to walks over to Dolly. And he said, now you won't have any question about space beings, that there are such a thing as space beings. And he walked out of the hospital. Like
Wow.
not even 5 minutes later, Linda, the doctors came in and nurses came in with the x-rays. And he said, where's the guy that was in that on the gurney? And she said, Dolly said he got up and walked out. They said, what do you mean he got up and walked out? About 85% of the bones in his body were broken, and he probably had internal bleeding. And they took a blood test of him too, and they showed Dolly that his red blood cells were pyramid shaped.
Whoa, that's so cool.
So the doctors said to Dolly, they said, as far as we're concerned, this person never existed. So after that, she had no question that there was such a thing as space beings. So I would visit with her, and I introduced her to Callie, and they bonded very quickly too. And one day, Callie called Dolly, and before Dolly could pick up the phone, it was a wall phone. As soon as she picked up the receiver and she heard Callie's voice, all the kitchen cabinets in her kitchen opened up. And she said, that is some entry that Callie gets on the phone and the phone rings and I pick it up and all the kitchen cabinet doors open. So Callie was living in Huntington Beach then, and Dolly lived in Orange, California. So she wanted me to bring her down to meet her. So I drove Callie down, and it was just the three of us there. And then probably about 15 or 20 minutes later, Patricia comes and she said, I'm sorry, I'm late meeting you folks here. She said, something guided me to stop at a yard sale. And she said, I got this enormous quartz crystal. It was probably maybe about 14 or 15 inches high, maybe 8 or 10 inches wide. And it was the most beautiful pinkish color quartz crystal. And she had it wrapped in a purple cloth. And she brought it out and she showed it to Dolly and to Callie. And then she started crying like a baby. And she said, please excuse me. She said, I can't control my emotions. And I said, Patricia, are you all right? And she said, I'm all right. She said, but I have to tell you this. I'm to give this quartz crystal to Callie. She needs it in her work. And she said, I feel so gifted to be able to gift her with this quartz crystal. And of course, Callie accepted it very graciously. And when we left and I'm taking her home, she said, Frank, I knew that Patricia was going to be coming and giving me this quartz crystal. She said she was guided to stop at that yard sale to find this, to give it to me. And she was going to use it in one of her ceremonies to open up Christ gates in Europe. So it's really amazing how these little synchronicities would occur, you know, just really, really remarkable.
That's amazing. Like, how would you even, I mean, a yard sale, this giant crystal?
And it was huge, and it had such an incredible energy. The frequency coming off of it was so beautiful. Oh my God, it was so placid. And Callie said, they told me that I would be given this crystal today. And she said, Frank, I didn't say anything to you. And I said, that's fine. And I said, you know, you just follow your inner guidance and these things happen.
What did it feel like when you were in the room with the crystal? What did you feel an energy coming from the crystal?
Yes. Oh my God. It was so pacifying. And there was like love coming from this crystal. It felt like such an incredible, placid, yet powerful love energy emanating from it. And I can only imagine how Callie would use her tones to activate this, because that's what she did. She used her tones to activate the crystals. And when the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, she wanted me to give her a recording of the tones that were used to communicate with the mothership. And she crafted a song based upon those tones with her tones. And I am telling you, what a piece of music she created off of that. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
Is there any way to hear that ever? I mean, is it recorded anywhere? Those
They
tones?
tried to record it. A woman that I had also known, whose daughter was into metaphysics, her name was Triana. She worked as a headhunter, believe it or not, in the cosmetics industry. But she was very metaphysical, and she had a house in Newport Beach. And I introduced her to Callie, and Callie sang to us several times. And she had this connection at a recording studio in Newport Beach, and they brought Callie in to try to record her voice. But the tones that she was using would go and move the register into the red zone. It couldn't record her tones properly. Because everybody wanted a copy of it. But you could hear it, and it was incredible. And a fellow that I knew, his name is Bill Hamilton. When I first moved to California, I got a chance to meet Bill, and he had his own experiences with craft and with the visitors. And he had met this woman in Hollywood. As soon as he saw her, he knew she was not from here. And he introduced himself to her. She introduced herself to him. And after they got a chance to know each other, she went by the name of Bonnie. And she said that she was from the inner earth. And her father was a Ramu, a high priest, and that her mother was a surface woman. And the Ramu happened to be on the surface doing something and met this woman and was drawn to her. And they formed a relationship, and he asked her if she would come with him and live in the inner earth. And she did. And they had this child, this girl, Bonnie. And apparently she had done something that created a problem because she was kind of rambunctious. And she was banned onto the surface for 2 years.
Oh,
So she got a job, and Bill recognized that this woman was really, really special. So we asked Bill, I said, would you be willing to have her meet us at Triana's house in Newport Beach? And Callie was there. And she came in, and she had an incredible energy about her. Her hair was like platinum blonde, like even more blonde than Jean Harlow. Her skin was like porcelain, like you could see the blood vessels underneath her skin, and her eyes were a golden color, and her irises were like almost vertical. And she was an incredible young lady, and she told us the story about her father and mother meeting, that she lived in the inner earth. The inner earth is indeed populated, and she said that there are visitors who come in through the openings into the inner earth to visit, and she said at some point that the inner earth is going to make their presence known to the surface people. And she did admit that she had a bit of a problem with doing something that she shouldn't have done, and she was banned to the surface for 2 years. But she said that there was a house in Long Beach, California, that was like a sanctuary for the inner earth beings. And she said she knew where the house was, and she said she would be allowed into the house. And she said there was a certain part of the house where she knew to go, where she would put her hand up against the wall, and the handprint would be recognized and read, and a partition would open in the house to a series of steps leading down to a tube tunnel where she can go anywhere that she needed to go on the planet. And she said that when she was a couple years younger, she said her cousin said, do you want to see a T-Rex? And Bonnie said, what do you mean, do you want to see a T-Rex? And he said, I can show you where there's still dinosaurs living in the Amazon rainforest. And Bonnie thought her cousin was kidding. So they took a tube tunnel train to the Amazon rainforest, and she said they came up a series of steps, and she said they were in an area of the rainforest that hasn't been explored yet. And she said it had a triple and quadruple canopy. She said the light didn't even come in. She said it was like all dark shadows. And she said the air had a very heavy, humid presence to it. And she said you could almost feel the moisture in the air. She said it was so heavy with humidity. And she said the air smelled very fetid too. It smelled not clean. And she said all of a sudden she heard this incredible roar. She said it was unlike any sound she had ever heard. And her cousin said to her, Bonnie, that's the sound of a T-Rex. It's not too far away. And she said, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Because they're like 30 to 40 feet tall. They're huge, huge beasts. And she said, but they still exist. They're in the Amazon rainforest. And she said that the inner earth people have been interacting with the star visitors for a long period of time, that the beings in the inner earth do not age as we do on the surface, that they grow all their own crops there. She said there's an inner earth sun that gives them the nutrition and sustenance like our sun would, but it's inside the inner earth. And she said it's like 70 to 72 degrees all year round. There's no storms as there are here. And she said the array of flowers and shrubbery is really, really beautiful. So she said, and she misses being there. She said the people here on the surface are so hostile, and they treat each other with so much disrespect and so much animosity. And she said it's like she's got to keep her shields up all the time to be around surface people. And she was with us for the afternoon, and a couple times during the course of the afternoon, Linda, she would have to break away. And she said, can you give me some time by myself? And she would just like gaze out the window at the ocean, and it's like she was gathering her energies. Because she said sometimes being around surface people, it tends to drain her energy. So
Yeah.
we understood, and she did that several times during the course of the afternoon. And but it was wonderful being and meeting with her. And there was nothing but sincerity in her voice. And she said to us, she said, "You'll know that the day is coming where the complete changeover would be because of disclosure and new revelations." She said, "There's going to be a time where energy reverses itself." And she said, "Your electrical devices will not function properly." She said, "The reversal of energy will be the signal that everything's going to be opened and made revealed to everyone."
Wow.
So I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. And it was wonderful spending the afternoon with her. And I'm telling you, her skin was the most beautiful. She had no blemishes on her face or her hands, nothing on her body at all. And
Right.
her eyes were just incredible. It's like you were interacting with somebody that was, well, she was not from here. And just extraordinary person. And she was very open with us. She shared a lot with us that afternoon. And the only thing she would take, because Triana had fixed all kinds of fruits and vegetables and things, the only thing she would take is water and kiwi. That's it. That's the only thing she would eat is kiwi. She didn't do any cheeses or any spreads or anything like that. Just water and kiwi.
I'm gonna have to start getting some kiwi. That sounds good.
But it was remarkable to be able to interact with somebody like that. And
Yes.
and it leads me to believe that there's people like that all over the planet that we don't recognize that are out there, and they're here for whatever purpose they need to be here. And all we could do is just be open and receptive if they want to share something with us, and not be judgmental and not make their being here any more uncomfortable than it is.
Right. Oh yeah. I feel that. I feel that totally. There's times when I don't feel like I want to be around people. In fact, most of the time. But
Yes. Dealing with pettiness sometimes is a problem. Dealing with pettiness sometimes is a real problem.
And just as you said, hostility. And I feel like there's different parts of the world where different areas where it's more like that than others.
Yes.
You can feel an energy shift just from one place to another, even within the town. It's just a feeling that you get when you're around just certain people or mindsets or energies or whatever you want to call it. But how long ago did this occur?
These were over the last 30 to 40 years, some of these experiences. And Dolly Campbell disappeared. If you go online and you do a Google search for Dolly Campbell, clairvoyant, you'll see incredible comments that people left about the readings that she gave them, how accurate they were, and everything that Dolly had told them was indeed real and came to pass. And then she just disappeared. She's not here.
How long ago did she disappear?
Probably at least 10 to 15 years ago.
Okay. So
now,
maybe
she may have left. She may have left. She may not have passed. She may have left.
Earth,
or she could be in the inner earth, or she could be, with star visitors that came to pick her up.
Right. Yeah, she got a ride.
You got a ride.
We got friends everywhere.
Of course.
And,
no, that's
awesome.
Well, I mean,
I love sharing these little stories. Go ahead, Adrian.
Linda's been having some direct experiences.
Yes.
You have to feel it to know it. I mean, and Frank knows. I mean, if you just like, there's just no, but it changes the way you interact. You're able to kind of recharge.
That's right. Yes, that's true. That's true. One of the things that Kelly shared with me is every morning she would do a sun salute. She would watch the sun as it's rising. And she taught me, when you look at the sun, you don't look directly at it. You look at it at an angle. And she said, let the sun's energy fill your body with tremendous energy. And she said, it'll stay with you all day long. So she called it a sun salute.
That's beautiful. I like to go to sunset every single night. Here, the sun sets over the water where I live.
Yes.
So I like to go with my daughter, and we like to stand and watch the sun go down over the water, and just tuck it in, say good night. And the energy that comes from the sun when as it's going down is the most amazing feeling. It's just.
It sure is. It sure
I
is.
don't know.
But try a sun salute some morning when the sun is coming in. Don't look directly at the sun. Look at it in an angle. So it's coming into your vision from a peripheral type of basis. But she did that every morning. And she said, Frank, it's an incredible way of getting energy for the day.
Oh, I feel it all the time. I live in the Sunshine State, so I love the sunshine.
Yes.
I try to
Yes.
at least 20 minutes a day in the sunshine, and I don't look directly into it. You're right, but
Yes.
I feel energy. I feel it giving me life. I feel it giving me life force. You know, like
Yes.
it's an incredible feeling, and I feel like being here I've lost years have peeled off of me.
God bless you. God bless you.
Yes, it's just a beautiful energy. And it's the minute that I got here, I think I've told this story before, but I felt like I was levitating.
Yes.
It was the most amazing feeling. I lost so much, things that had been weighing me down, felt like they were lifted off of me and like I could float. It was
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah, there's no feeling. You have to experience it to know it. You have to
Yeah,
experience it to know it. But I
absolutely.
will be sending you and Andrea copies of Jaffelin Mothership of the Galaxy. I even love the name. The name is so magical. Don't you think
Yeah.
so, Andrea?
Oh my God. Yeah, I can't wait to read that.
Oh my God, you'll love it. And
Oh.
it's got a surprise ending in it. The ending, don't go to the ending first. Read the book. The surprise ending is beautiful. Oh my God.
You knew I'd do that somehow.
I had the feeling, yes. Please don't do that. This way,
Okay, I won't.
the effect of the book and the message will be so profound. Just let it flow.
I will. I will do that. I've been
Because
good
I know
lately.
some people like to do that. They like to cut to the chase. Don't do it this time, please.
I see. I have this habit of, like, I don't do it with every book, but I like to look at the last page to make sure that I want to read the whole thing.
Take my word for it, and you'll be greatly rewarded. And your mind will start to reel when everything comes together. Oh my God.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. It sounds amazing.
And it was never officially published. It was just in manuscript format. That's it.
That's all it needed to be. You know, that's
Some of the best things have never been published.
Yes. But dear ones, I need to return to the world of illusion. I thank you so very much for this opportunity of being able to share today. And thank you for your openness and receptiveness. And again, there's more stories to be shared. And they will be shared.
So
we can't wait.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More to come. Keep smiling.
So
Yep. See upstairs. See upstairs.
see upstairs.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.